Squiz Kids acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands on which we podcast, the Turrbal and Gadigal people.
Squiz Kids! It's your daily news fix. Fun, free, fresh.
Hello and welcome to Squiz Kids Today, your fresh take on what's happening in the world around you. I'm Bryce Corbett. It's Monday, March 6. In Squiz Kids Today, good news for the planet. Jungle survivor eats worms. Dream debut for the Dolphins. And Ed Sheeran breaks a record. That's what's making news, kid style.
The lowdown.
There was good news and not so good news for the environment over the weekend. Let's tackle the not so good news first. And that comes in the shape of a new report which has found that ice in Antarctica has melted to record low levels. Scientists at the CSIRO, which is Australia's big government scientific research organisation, have found that in 40 years of satellite observations of the frozen continent to our south, there has never been less ice around the continent than there was last week. They are now trying to figure out if the drops in sea ice is just a natural phenomenon or if it signals that global warming is getting worse. On the positive side, two new reports have found that people in Europe and in the United States have embraced renewable energy at a much faster rate than anyone expected. Renewable energy is electricity that doesn't need fossil fuels to generate it. Wind, solar, hydro, you get the gist. It's much better for the environment. And according to two new reports, renewable energy will account for more than 45% of supply in EU countries by 2030, and it already accounts for some 40% of electricity used in the United States. And that, my friends, is great news for the planet. Hands up, who'd like a shorter school week? I can't see you, but I'm going to guess there are lots of hands in the air right now. Well, it could become a reality, especially if you live in Queensland, as reports say more and more schools are experimenting with 4.5-day school weeks instead of the full 5 days. That means finishing school at lunchtime 1 day a week. There's a great exercise in today's Classroom Companion where you get to have a discussion in class about the pros and cons of a shorter schooling week. Get your arguments ready, and remember, Squiz Kids, only have respectful conversations.
Spin the globe.
Each day we give the world globe a spin and find a news story from wherever it stops. And today we've landed in Bolivia, in South America, where a man has survived a whole month in the jungle by eating worms. Ew. The 30-year-old man was out hunting with friends when he became separated from them and became lost in the jungle. He says he survived for 31 days by drinking rainwater that he collected in his shoes, clever, and also by eating a jungle fruit similar to papaya and, get this, by eating worms. When found by his friends who had formed a search party and refused to give up looking for him, he said the scariest part of the ordeal was hiding from jaguars. Gives new meaning to the expression, it's a jungle out there.
Sport time.
Footy is well and truly back, my friends, and the NRL kicked off in fine fashion over the weekend as old champs met new contenders and a brand new team showed they'd be a force to be reckoned with. Highlights from a big 4 days of footy included the Brisbane Broncos staging an upset in Penrith by beating last year's premiers, the Panthers. It was only by a whisker, mind you, at 13-12, but the victory was enough to put a spring in the Brizzy boys' step and put the tail between the Panthers' legs. Manly made short work of the Bulldogs, the Rabbitohs were too strong against the Sharkies, and the Warriors had a good win in front of an Auckland home crowd against the Knights. But it was the Dolphins versus the Roosters clash in Brisbane yesterday afternoon that all eyes were on as the newest team in the comp finally got to show what they are made of. And, in my favourite bit of alliteration for today's podcast, it was a dream debut for the Dolphins, steamrolling over the top of the highly fancied Sydney Roosters to win 28-18. Truly the stuff of footy fairy tales.
Pop Culture Corner.
After years of being cancelled by COVID, live music in Australia is back in full swing, and the weekend just gone was the perfect example of how it's back with a vengeance. As Harry Styles completed his all-conquering Aussie tour in Sydney with a duet of the song Horses with Aussie rock legend Daryl Braithwaite, kids of the 90s, and I mean your parents, were being thrilled by the Backstreet Boys, an American boy band who have found popularity again and were back on our shores after a 20-year break. Meanwhile, down in Melbourne, the ginger-haired marvel himself, Ed Sheeran, was busy breaking records of his own, attracting the most number of people to a concert in the history of Australian music. Some 110,000 fans packed into the MCG on Friday night to watch Sheeran play his long list of international hits. Welcome back, live music. We've missed you. This is it, my friends, your last chance to add your voice to the Squiz Kids inaugural Kids and Media Survey. A snapshot of where our kids are getting their information, and how much, if at all, parents and educators are concerned about the influence of social media. The survey closes tonight. Hop into it via our website squizkids.com.au or via the link in today's episode notes. And, as Amanda said on Friday, one lucky respondent will win a chance to either have their kid's voice immortalised in a Squiz Kids segment sting, or opt to have me dial into a FaceTime chat with your kids or your classroom. But look lively, teachers and parents, you've only got 12 hours left.
Time for the quiz.
This is the part of the podcast where you get to test how well you've been listening. Question number 1. In which country has a man survived a month in the jungle by eating worms? Yeah, that's right. The country I'm talking about is Bolivia. Question number 2. The ice shelf of which continent has shrunk to record lows, according to scientists? Yes, of course, it's Antarctica. Question number 3. Which pop star has broken a record for the most number of tickets sold to an Australian concert? Yeah, of course, it's Ed Sheeran.
Shout-outs.
It's March 6. The trampoline was invented on this day 78 years ago. Bounce, bounce. And it's also a public holiday in WA today. Maybe if you're there, you can spend the day on the tramp. It's also a special day for these Squiz Kids celebrating a birthday today. Samara from Oyster Bay, Maggie from Flagstaff Hill, Chase from Gundagai, Hudson and Miriam from Canberra, Valentina from Watsonia, Elise from Forest Lake, Maddie from Melbourne, Blake from Middle Harbour, Sophie and Sophia from Mossman, and finally to Katie, who's listening all the way over there in Edinburgh in Scotland. And belated birthday shout-outs go to Molly from Camden, Alina from Mossman, and Mia from Cambridge Gardens. And today's classroom shout-outs go to Class 3M and Mrs. Morgan at Lennox Head Public School, Class 5H and Miss Horton at DY Public School, Class 3 Green and Mrs. Searle at All Saints Parish Primary School in Albany Creek, Class 3 Mally and Mrs. Walsh at Schofields Public School, Classes F2 and F12 at Hammond Park Primary School, and Classes 5A, B and C at Wonga Park Primary School, who I believe are making their very own podcasts in class. Don't forget, if you've got a birthday coming up and you want a shout-out, or if you're after a classroom shout-out, drop us a line at squizkids@thesquiz.com.au or fill out the form on our website. Well, that's all we have time for. Thanks for listening to Squiz Kids today. We'll be back again tomorrow. In the meantime, get out there and have a most excellent day. Over and out.